All right, let's go on a trip. But this is a journey you can't see. We're going to follow a single radio signal, all the way from its birth in a studio, right to the moment it comes out of your radio. Ready? Let's jump in.
Just so you know where we're coming from, this is actually the final part 40 of a big series all about modern broadcast transmission from Virtualization Options LLC. We're zeroing in on this last chapter to really see the whole picture, that complete journey of the signal from A to Z.
You know that feeling? You're in your car, your favorite song comes on, and you just have that moment of, wait, how is this happening? How is music just flying through the air? Well, that's the mystery we're solving today. We're going to follow that signal and see exactly how it's done.
Okay, so every journey has a starting line. For our signal, that's the broadcast studio. This is where it all begins, where the sound is recorded, mixed, and shined up before it gets sent out on its incredible adventure.
So step one is just the sound itself, right? In the studio. But it doesn't just go straight out. First, it gets sent through some really fancy audio processors. These things are key. They tweak the loudness and make everything super clear, giving it that professional on-air punch. After that, it's got to get to the transmitter, and that's not always next door. It needs its own special highway.
And here's something you might not think about. The radio studio, it's probably in some high-rise in the middle of the city. But the giant antenna, that needs to be way up high, maybe on a mountain or out in a field somewhere to get the best signal out. So how do you connect the two? That's where the STL comes in, the studio to transmitter link. It's like a private high-speed bridge connecting the city studio to the remote tower.
So how do they build that bridge? Well, for a long time, the classic way was with a dedicated microwave link. You know those dish antennas you see on towers? That's still a super reliable method. But now, of course, we've got more options. A lot of stations use super fast fiber optic cables, or they'll even use the internet with a special rock-solid technology called audio over IP.
Okay, our signal has made it across the STL. It's arrived at the transmitter site. Now we're entering the real powerhouse, the engine room of the whole operation. This is where that nice, clean audio gets turned into a super powerful radio wave that can travel for miles.
So inside that transmitter box, you've basically got two main parts. I like to think of it like this. You have the brain and the muscle. The brain is the exciter. Its job is to create the perfect, precise radio signal, but at a very low power. Then comes the muscle, the power amplifier. It takes that tiny little signal from the brain and just cranks it up, boosting it with thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of watts. It's raw power. And these modern exciters, wow, they're seriously cool. Back in the day, they used to analog parts that could get a little wonky and drift off the right frequency, but now they use something called direct digital synthesis, or DDS. Basically, it's a computer chip that uses pure mathematics to generate a flawless radio wave. The precision is just unreal. It means the station is always perfectly on frequency, which makes a massive difference in sound quality. All right, check this out. We've got our audio signal on one hand and this super powerful pure radio wave on the other, but they're separate. So how do you get the music onto the wave? That's the real magic trick of radio. It's a process called modulation, and it's basically the secret code that makes everything work. We've all seen the letters AM and FM on our radio dials, but what do they actually mean? It's pretty simple, really. For AM, which is amplitude modulation, the audio makes the strength of the radio wave go up and down. For FM, or frequency modulation, the audio makes the speed or the frequency of the wave change. And here's why that matters so much. A lot of interference, like static from a storm, messes with a signal's strength. Since FM doesn't care about strength, just speed, it's way more immune to that noise. And that is why FM radio sounds so crisp and clean. But now, we've gone even further. We've got digital modulation, and it's a whole new ballgame. Instead of just tweaking the wave, it turns the audio into pure digital data, just ones and zeros. Then it cleverly packs that data onto the radio signal. The payoff is huge. You get perfect CD-quality sound. It has built-in error correction, so it can fix itself if it runs into interference, and it opens the door to awesome stuff like HD radio, where one station can actually broadcast multiple different channels at the same time. So, let's recap. Our signal has been cleaned up, the audio has been encoded onto it, and it's been amplified with a massive amount of power. It's ready. There's just one final step. It needs to be launched into the world. It's time for the final leap, and that happens at the antenna.
Have you ever noticed how different radio towers can look? That's not just for style. Take a look. On the left, you have a classic AM tower. The wild thing is, the entire tower is the antenna. Then on the right, you've got a much more intricate FM antenna. So why the huge difference? It all comes down to the size of the radio waves themselves. AM waves are enormous. We're talking hundreds of meters long. FM waves, on the other hand, are way shorter, only a few meters long. And that size difference totally changes how they travel through the air. FM and TV signals are pretty straightforward. They shoot out in a straight line, what we call line of sight. They go until they hit the horizon, and that's about it. But AM is a whole different beast. During the day, its signal can actually hug the curve of the Earth. We call that a ground wave. But at night, something amazing happens. It can bounce off the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere, like a mirror. And that's called a skywave.
And this skywave thing is just mind-blowing. It's the reason why, if you're driving late at night and scanning the AM dial, you can suddenly hear a station from a city that's hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 miles away. That signal is literally hopping across the continent, bouncing between the sky and the ground. It's incredible.
Okay, so we've covered the physics. But what does a broadcast station look like today in the age of the internet? Well, it's not just about RF engineering anymore. Now, it's all about the mashup of broadcasting and IT.
Get this. Today's broadcast engineer doesn't have to be physically at the transmitter site to know what's going on. They can pull up a web browser on their laptop or even their phone and see everything. They can monitor the power output, the temperature, every critical detail, all in real time, from anywhere in the world. It's all on a digital dashboard.
And this blend of IT and radio frequency tech is absolutely everywhere now. You've got remote monitoring that uses the same protocols as any computer network. You've got audio being sent over IP links. If something goes wrong, the system sends an automatic email or a text message. And of course, the big one. Whenever you connect something this important to a network, cybersecurity suddenly becomes a massive deal. It really comes down to what our source material points out. To be a broadcast engineer today, you kind of have to be a master of two different worlds. You need to know all the classic radio engineering stuff, and you have to be an expert in modern IT and networking.
So that brings us to the big question, right? We live in a world of Spotify and Netflix where everything is on demand, just for you. So what's the future for broadcasting, this powerful one-to-many technology that can hit everyone in a city or even a country all at once, for free? In an emergency, it's essential. In our daily lives, it's a shared experience. So where does it go from here? Definitely something to think about.